Good evening and welcome to South Asia Newsline. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Here are the top stories we're tracking for you on Tuesday, the 8th of February. South Korea's foreign minister calls Indian counterpart, expresses regret on Hyundai Pakistan's Kashmir post. Faulty policies of PM Imran's government paralyzed Pakistan's economy, says PDM chief Fazlur Rehman. And Taliban rejects UN report of foreign terror groups in Afghanistan. And now for all the details. South Korea's foreign minister Chung Eui-yong called Indian counterpart S. Jaishankar and expressed regret after the Pakistani partner of the country's automobile giant Hyundai posted controversial remarks on Kashmir, commemorating what it described as the sacrifices of Kashmiris struggling for self-determination. India's foreign ministry also released a statement saying that it summoned South Korea's ambassador to express displeasure. It was highlighted that this matter concerned India's territorial integrity, on which there could be no compromise, it said. India says Pakistan supports an armed insurrection against New Delhi's rule in Jammu Kashmir. Pakistan denies the charge and says it only provides diplomatic and moral support for the Kashmiri people. Earlier on Tuesday, Hyundai also issued an apology over the unauthorized tweet after the row triggered a backlash by Indians. Hyundai is India's second-largest car seller, selling close to 500,000 vehicles in the country in the last fiscal year and exporting over 1 million units, making it India's largest car exporters. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Tuesday said his government's efforts to fight the COVID-19 pandemic over the last 2 years led to high economic growth and middling inflation as he defended his policies amid protest by the opposition. The PM said despite the pandemic, India's economy was growing at the fastest pace among major economies.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi defended his government's efforts to fight the COVID-19 pandemic over the last 2 years, saying on Tuesday they led to high economic growth and middling inflation, unlike the situation in some advanced economies. Despite the pandemic, India's economy was growing at the fastest pace among major economies, while manufacturing incentives helped to bolster growth, Modi told the upper house of parliament in remarks that triggered opposition protests. The government has distributed free food grain to 800 million people during the pandemic, while taking steps to tame inflation, the PM said, as he accused opposition parties of creating panic about the pandemic's impact.
यूपीए के समय महंगाई डबल डिजिट छू रही थी। यूपीए के समय डबल डिजिट छू रही थी। आज हम एकमात्र बड़ी इकोनॉमी है जो हाई ग्रोथ और मीडियम इन्फ्लेशन अनुभव कर रहे हैं।
Opposition's criticism of Modi's handling of the pandemic highlighted that India slipped last year to 101 among 116 nations on the Global Hunger Index from a previous ranking of 94, while many people face difficulties. P. Chidambaram, a senior Congress leader, blamed government policies for a rise in inflation and loss of jobs during the pandemic, besides widening income inequalities.
And in news from Pakistan, an alliance of opposition parties, Pakistan Democratic Movement chief Maulana Fazlur Rahman lashed out at Prime Minister Imran Khan-led PTI government on Monday and said that the faulty policies of the incompetent rulers had paralyzed the country's economy. Addressing a rally, Rahman blamed the government for mortgaging the central bank to the International Monetary Fund for loans.
Pakistan Democratic Movement of PDM chief Maulana Fazlur Rahman lashed out at Prime Minister Imran Khan-led PTI government on Monday and said that the faulty policies of incompetent rulers had paralyzed the country's economy. Addressing a public meeting, Rahman said the federal government is mortgaging the State Bank of Pakistan to the International Monetary Fund for loans. The economies of Bangladesh and war-torn Afghanistan are doing better than Pakistan, he said. Rahman urged the gathering to oust the government in future elections if they wanted the country to be safe.
अगर आपने तहरीक इंसाफ को और पीटीआई को वोट देना है तो फिर आप इस मुल्क को डबोने और तबाह करने में उनके साथ शरीक हो जाएंगे। ऐसा तो नहीं करना ना इंशाल्लाह, बिल्कुल भी नहीं करना।
Pakistan's inflation rate rose to 13% in January from a year earlier, the highest in 2 years. Rising fuel and electricity costs have put increasing pressure on the government as it grapples with widening current account deficit.
And moving on, an ongoing land acquisition drive by non-locals in Gilgit Baltistan to allegedly change the demography has left the residents of the illegally occupied region worried. They blame the move as part of Islamabad's deliberate attempts to expand its political control over the disputed territory.
Locals in Gilgit Baltistan have raised concern over a continuous land acquisition drive by mafias who are illegally grabbing several acres of land and allegedly changing the demography of the illegally occupied region by selling it to non-locals. They have accused Pakistan government has been providing a no objection certificate to the land mafias as part of its anti-native policies and vigorous attempts at expanding its political control over the disputed territory.
मुकामी सरमाएदार लोग यहाँ पे आके जो ज़मीनों का जो इन्होंने एक सिलसिला स्टार्ट किया है पूरे गिलगित बल्तिस्तान के अंदर ख़रीदने के लिए, हम इसकी भरपूर मज़म्मत करते हैं और हम ये समझते हैं कि गिलगित बल्तिस्तान के अंदर आके हम लीज़ पे ले लें और लीज़ पे लेके यहाँ पे बिज़नेस कर सकते हैं, हम इसकी मुखालिफत नहीं करते हैं। लेकिन जो यहाँ पे आके ज़मीनें लेके अपने आप को इस इलाके के जो बाशिंदों में शामिल होने की वो जो चक्कर है, हम इसकी मुखालिफत करते हैं।
There has also been continuous dissent against the existing land laws, which allow government ownership over all barren land. Recently, a massive protest was also held by locals over attempts by Pakistan Army and the government to acquire hundreds of acres of land from local people to make deliberate demographic changes.
And in news from Afghanistan, the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan has rejected a recent UN report which claimed that the presence of foreign groups have increased in the war-torn nation after the collapse of the former administration in August last year. The report by the UN Security Council monitoring team said that there were no recent signs that the Taliban has taken steps to limit the activities of foreign terrorist fighters in the country.
The Taliban government in Afghanistan has rejected a report by the UNSC monitoring team which claimed that the presence and activities of foreign insurgent groups have increased in the war-torn nation after the collapse of the foreign administration in August last year. The Taliban's foreign ministry, in a statement on Monday, said the Islamic Emirate deems such reports lacking evidence, documents and addresses neither in the interest of Afghanistan, the region or the world. The ministry further said that the Taliban regime has implemented its commitments laid out in 2020 Doha Agreement and does not allow anyone to threaten any country from Afghanistan's territory. The report by the UN Security Council monitoring team said that there were no recent signs that the Taliban has taken steps to limit the activities of foreign terrorist fighters in the country. The report also questioned the Taliban's commitment under the Doha Agreement to preventing international terrorist threats from having a foothold in Afghanistan and expressed concerns that foreign groups might find safe haven in Afghanistan. According to the report, slain Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden's son visited Afghanistan late last year. Reacting to this claim, the Taliban's deputy spokesperson Bilal Karimi said on Monday that no visit and no meeting between anyone happened. The report comes as February 15 marks 6 months since the Taliban swept to power in Afghanistan, seizing the capital of Kabul. Foreign powers have been reluctant to recognize the Taliban administration, while Western nations led by the United States have frozen billions of dollars worth of Afghan banking assets and cut off development funding that once formed the backbone of Afghanistan's economy.
An animated feature film named Flee, directed by Danish filmmaker Jonas Poher Rasmussen, tells the story of an Afghan refugee who shares his hidden past for the first time of fleeing his country. The film received 2 British Academy Film Awards nominations last week. Jonas said the motivation behind his film was to remind people about life's true story and to depict the past coming alive.
40-year-old Danish filmmaker Jonas Poher Rasmussen, in his animated documentary Flee, has told the story of his refuge friend's escape from Afghanistan, whom he met when he was 15 years old. The film mixes animation with real historic archive footage of Afghanistan in the 80s as the Afghan teenager under the pseudonym Amin Nawabi recalls reliving past trauma and recounts his escape to the Scandinavian country on foot after his entire family was killed. Rasmussen said that he initially set out to tell the story about friendship secrets, but post-2015 migrant crisis in Europe, his perspective changed. Amid the film's victorious launch, Afghanistan once again made the headlines last year as the Taliban took control and thousands of civilians thronged Kabul airport seeking to escape, making the film sadly relevant all of a sudden, Rasmussen said.
The film really was born out of me being curious about my friend. I didn't think I want to do a refugee story and then, went out and found a refugee. This was really about friendship just as much as about refugees, and about having secrets. And then, of course, when the refugee crisis hit, I think we were like a year or two into the process of making the film. My perspective kind of changed, and I kind of felt a need to give, the refugees we saw on the highways in Denmark and the rest of Europe a human face.
The film received 2 British Academy of Film Awards nominations last week and has been shortlisted in the documentary feature and international feature film categories at the 2022 Oscars.
And the mesmerizing winter season is at its peak in India's Jammu Kashmir territory, and tourists from across the country are flocking to experience its beauty and the winter chill. An Igloo Cafe that recently started operations in Gulmarg town has become the most talked about tourist attraction in the Union Territory.
An Igloo Cafe opened in Gulmarg town of India's northern Jammu and Kashmir has become a new tourist attraction in the Union Territory. The cafe named Snowglue has been set up at the famous ski resort of Gulmarg and is 37.5 feet tall and 44.5 feet in diameter. There are 2 sections in the Igloo Cafe, one for sitting and one for art space and wall carvings. The cafe has 10 tables and is spacious enough to accommodate 40 diners. It also has a staircase. The management claims that this is the biggest Igloo Cafe in the world and they have applied for the Guinness World Record.
तो इसकी लेंथ एंड हाइट इसकी 37.5 फीट है और इसका डायमीटर 44.5 फीट है. इसको 64 डेज लगे हैं कंप्लीट होने में और कम से कम 1700 पीपल ने इसमें कंट्रीब्यूट किया है ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ 2 मंथ्स. तो मतलब और सारा हमारा लोकल वर्कफोर्स है बिकॉज हमारी लोकल इकोनॉमी काफ़ी ज़्यादा मतलब हमारी कोशिश थी कि हम अपनी लोकल इकोनॉमी को बूस्ट करें बिकॉज वी ऑल एक दूसरे पे हम डिपेंडेंट है. एक इंटरडिपेंडेंट इकोनॉमी है.
The cafe, with its unique concept, is also a delight for the tourists in the Union Territory.
मैंने सुना था कि जन्नत है कश्मीर, कश्मीर को जन्नत बोलते हैं, लेकिन हाँ ये ज़रूर जन्नत ही है. आज मैं आई हूँ ये इग्लू होटल में और ये वाकई जन्नत से कम नहीं है. इधर आप देख सकते हो, इधर बहुत हसीन नज़ारे भी है और होटल के साथ आप बहुत जलपान या और कुछ फैसिलिटीज़ भी आप अगर चाहो तो वो उसका लाभ ले सकते हैं.
Jammu and Kashmir is a well-known tourist destination for winter activities, making tourism as one of the mainstays of the region's economy. The tourism industry is trying to recover from the woes of coronavirus pandemic that struck the country since 2020.
Well, that's all we have for you from South Asia this evening. Now our viewers can watch the show on SouthAsiaNewsline.com. You can also visit us on Facebook.com/SAsiaNewsline and follow us on Twitter @SAsiaNewsline. That's all in tonight's edition. We'll see you same time tomorrow. Goodbye.